Prof, I listened to Dr. Kojo Asante talk about the police council looking into setting up an inquiry into what happened in Ablekuma North. Then it reminds me of one recommendation you made in your report on the back of the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election chaos. You recommend that we should set up an independent police commission, quite separate from the police service itself, that can obviously oversee the actions of the security agencies and look into what happened. I must say, and I stand to be corrected, that I haven't heard any movement on that piece of intervention that you believe at the time, having had all the evidence before you, that would have dealt with this matter in a structural way.
Well, as Kojo has hinted, there are incentives in having a degree of control over the police. And so it's hard sometimes to deal with these things because the incentives are powerful instruments for keeping things the way they are. The reason for that recommendation way back in 2019 or so, the reason for that recommendation way back was for us to move away from a situation in which the police are police unto themselves. In other words, when the police misbehave, quote unquote, the police will have to investigate the police. And it's counterintuitive to think about it this way. So in many jurisdictions, what they have is an independent body that oversees the police when there are complaints about the police. Because typically it doesn't make sense for an entity to investigate itself. The entity can, but given our history, we normally don't go far when an entity investigates itself. And so the recommendation to have the police to have an independent commission is for that commission to, as it were, oversee matters affecting the police. So, for instance, if you have complaints about police brutality, police excesses, police misconduct, professional misbehavior, all these complaints that affect the police, the expectation is that you have an independent commission. And that commission will receive reports, will undertake investigations, will conduct hearings, and will ensure that appropriate remedies are put in place moving forward. I think the recommendations are still very much relevant today. And subject to some, some changes if the government so desires, subject to some revisions, these recommendations can still be implemented. It is a matter of big regret for me, as I indicated earlier, why the government that spent money to set up the commission substantially rejected the recommendations of the commission, many of which are so difficult to reject if you ask me, if you face the facts, because the hearings were actually public and everybody saw what happened. There are people who haven't recovered from that till today. There are people who have severed limbs. There are people who suffered greatly because of the Ayawaso Commission violence. And to think of the fact that we substantially rubbished the outcome of the commission's work, merely because, of disagreements with the outcome, is one that I find quite troubling. And as I indicated, the report is still there and it can be implemented. And we still have a lot more elections ahead of us moving forward into the future. It is the reason why we cannot afford to constantly go through the cycle. Indeed, after the Ayawaso Commission report, we've had major electoral incidents in the general elections in Ghana. Yep. And the small election we've had in Ablekuma has indicated to us that we have major problems ahead of us. And we have one in Akwitia coming. We have general elections ahead of us. I think it's imperative that as a country, we come to a reckoning that we cannot constantly come around and complain and lament and brood over something that typically we could have taken action on after a forensic investigation has been undertaken, so to speak, has been undertaken into an incident and for which recommendations have been made. But for some reason, we are just not following through with the recommendation.